there somebody in the administration that's in charge of selling this to the American people?
Spokesman said that Wednesday's hearing on the administration's handling of the attack on the U.S. consulate in Benghazi is covering old ground and an attempt by some Republicans to politicize the September 11th attack. Here's more of that news briefing.
Jay, in advance of today's hearing on Benghazi, Senator Lindsey Graham said, "I think the dam is about to break on Benghazi. We're going to find people asleep at the switch when it comes to the State Department, including Hillary Clinton." What do you say to this allegation from top Republicans that Hillary Clinton was asleep at the switch?
Well, I'd say a couple of things. This administration has made extraordinary efforts to work with 5 different congressional committees investigating what happened before, during, and after the Benghazi attacks, including, over the past 8 months, testifying in 10 congressional hearings, holding 20 staff briefings, and providing over 25,000 pages of documents. Another leading Senate Republican, Senator Corker, said today that he feels like he knows what happened in Benghazi and he is, quote, fairly satisfied. And as the New York Times reported this morning, much of what the witnesses were expected to raise in the hearings today has already been addressed both in hearings and in the Accountability Review Board report. I mean, this is a subject that has, from its beginning, been subject to attempts to politicize it by Republicans, when in fact what happened in Benghazi was a tragedy, and the president has been committed from day one to 2 things: making sure that those who are responsible for the deaths of 4 Americans are found and brought to justice, and that we do everything we need to do to ensure that this kind of attack cannot happen again. And the standing up of the Accountability Review Board by then Secretary Clinton, with the full support of the president, demonstrates the seriousness with which she took this issue. That board, that review board, issued a report that was unsparing and highly critical in some areas, and was led by 2 highly respected, nonpartisan experts in the field of national security, Admiral Mullen and Ambassador Pickering. And that report contained within it a series of recommendations, every single one of which has been acted on or is being acted on by the State Department. And I think, again, that demonstrates the seriousness with which we took the true issues here. It also, given the remarkable level of cooperation that we've demonstrated with congressional committees and investigators thus far, demonstrates again that we're at a place where there are attempts to politicize this when that should not be the case.
Why do you think they're going after Hillary Clinton?
Well, I'm not sure that they are. I will note that in the report issued by the committee, Chairman Iss's committee, which was, again, deliberately excluded Democrats, was highly partisan. It included a main allegation within it that was described by the Washington Post fact checker this way, quote, "ISA has no basis or evidence to show that Clinton, then Secretary Clinton, had anything to do with this cable, any more than she personally approved the cable on proper email etiquette. The odds are extremely long that Secretary Clinton ever saw or approved this memo, giving us confidence that his inflammatory and reckless language qualifies as a whopper." That would be Chairman Iss's language.
So the White House is confident that Hillary Clinton acted appropriately throughout this process?
We are, and I think I would point you to the Accountability Review Board and what I think I would point you to the report that they put out. I would point you to what the 2 heads of that board, Ambassador Pickering and Admiral Mullen, each highly praised by both sides of the aisle for their long, distinguished careers, put out in a statement this week, quote, "From the beginning of the ARB process, we had unfettered access to everyone and everything, including all the documentation we needed. Our marching orders were to get to the bottom of what happened, and that is what we did." Again, this is an unsparing report done by 2 career professionals, nonpartisan career professionals. They contained within it very serious recommendations, found shortcomings that needed to be corrected, and the State Department acted immediately on that.
So I need to ask you also about something you said on November 28th. You said that the talking points that were prepared for Ambassador Rice and the administration, given, as you pointed out at the time, to the Hill, were compiled, written up by the intelligence community that there was no change that was asked for by the White House or by the State Department except for a single word. But now the Weekly Standard has obtained 3 revisions to these talking points that show substantial changes that were done and asked for specifically by the State Department. Were you incorrect when you said?
No, I was not.
that
And
only
I
a
think
single word?
what remains the case is that the intelligence community, CIA, drafted these talking points and redrafted these talking points. The fact that there are inputs is always the case in a process like this. But the only edits made by anyone here at the White House were stylistic and non-substantive. They corrected the description of the building or the facility in Benghazi from consulate to diplomatic facility and the like. And ultimately, this all has been discussed and reviewed and provided in enormous levels of detail by the administration to congressional investigators. And the attempt to politicize the talking points, again, is part of an effort to chase after what isn't the substance here. The substance is the diplomatic facility in Benghazi was attacked. 4 Americans were killed. The president has been committed from day one to finding and bringing to justice those responsible, and committed to from day one to ensuring that we take every step we can to protect our diplomats in the future and to ensure that this kind of event doesn't happen again. And I mean, you know, from within the hours of the attack, beginning with a press release that was much maligned even by members of his own party, the Republican nominee for president tried to politicize this, and that has been the case ever since. And it unfortunately continues to this day. I mean, again, you've seen levels of cooperation here that are rather extraordinary. 25,000 pages of documents, 20 staff briefings, 10 congressional hearings, and nothing that we expect to hear today. In this hearing, it contradicts anything that has already been discussed and revealed, assessed by the Accountability Review Board. I mean, if it is the position of critics that that review board and its 2 chairs are not being faithful to the facts and the truth, and you know, I think they have to discuss that with the chairs of the board. But the fact is that this has been looked at exhaustively.
But Jay, I'm specifically asking about what you said, and even what you just said now about stylistic changes. These changes look much more than stylistic. I mean, there's references to security concerns expressed on September 10th, the day before the attack, being taken out. There's references to Al-Qaeda being taken out.
What we said, and what remains true to this day, is that the intelligence community drafted and redrafted these points. They were not, you know, and I think that is what the deputy director of the CIA has said. And the fact that there is inputs from others doesn't change the fact that the CIA or the intelligence community drafts these points consistent with what they know. They're drafting points to provide information to members of Congress as well as members of the administration so that they can speak publicly about it. And again, if you look substantively at the information provided in the talking points about what happened in Benghazi, I think that reflects everything that we've said. I mean, to this day, it has to be acknowledged that those talking points that Susan Rice, Ambassador Rice, went out and used on those Sunday shows, and that I, of course, used when I discussed it, made clear, A, that we believe that extremists were involved in the attack, and B, that we knew that more information would come to light and that our understanding of what happened would be affected as that information became available. And every bit of information that's become available about it in those days following it and weeks following it was provided by us because we were committed then and now to making sure we found out what happened, who was responsible, and make sure that we could take steps to prevent it from happening again. Brianna, you got some? No? Ed?
Do you still believe that an anti-Muslim video sparked the terror attack then?
No, Ed, I think this has been, again, adjudicated and assessed and litigated many times. That is, when you look at those talking points, the one reference there is to protests that turned out not to be the case. But I would remind you that on the Friday before the Sunday appearances, we had violent demonstrations going on at embassy facilities around the world. We had a black flag raised at one of our embassies. We had breaches of walls at another embassy. We had a great deal of concern as a result of the protests surrounding these videos about the safety and security of diplomatic personnel around the region and the world. And it is entirely appropriate that there was concern about that, and I think understandable that there was some possibility of a connection between the kind of violent demonstrations we were seeing in Cairo and what took place in Benghazi. But in the end, if you look at what was said, and look, I mean, here, let's just review the facts because it gets a little simplistic. Here is what Ambassador Rice said on Face the Nation that Sunday. It is clear that there were extremist elements that joined and escalated the violence, whether they were al-Qaeda affiliates, whether they were Libyan-based extremists, or al-Qaeda itself, I think is one of the things we'll have to determine. That is a simple statement of the facts that we knew when we knew them, and that is on the Sunday about which so much has been discussed and misrepresented.